Welcome. You're watching CNBC TV18. I'm Archana Solanki. I have a very special guest with me. Many years ago in 2003, he had interned as a doctor in KM Hospital and he's one of the youngest Prime Ministers of Ireland. I have with me Dr. Leo Varadkar. Sir, thank you so much for making time and speaking to CNBC TV18. How have you been?
Hello, good evening, and delighted to be back in Mumbai.
You have a very strong connection with India, Mumbai. Do you want to talk about that? How does it feel?
Yes, so as you can probably guess from my surname, my father's Maharashtrian and grew up here in the city, and I still have a lot of cousins here and a lot of family here, and have had a chance to visit a few times in the past few years. Was here as a medical student, here as a child, also here when I was a minister in government. Came on a family visit back in 2019, and this is my first time being here since I stepped down as Prime Minister. So keen to learn a lot more about India and see where the country is going to go in the next few years.
Lovely. The biggest headline that everybody's talking about right now is the outcome of the US elections. In your view, what is your perspective on what's happened in the US?
Yeah, well, look, I think first of all, we have to accept the result and congratulate President Trump. It was a very clear result and a very clear victory for him. I do think it means the next 4 years are going to be quite unpredictable. We're going to see challenges around trade, particularly if the US becomes more nationalist in terms of tariffs and trade. We're going to see changes around regulations, I think, in the US that we'll have to take account of as well, because we're working together but also in competition, and I think there will be implications for security. Large parts of the world really depend on America for security, whether it's Europe, whether it's South Korea, Japan, Ukraine, for example. That is going to be less certain, and I do think it points to a trajectory towards a more multipolar world where America is less dominant. That was probably happening anyway, but I think that becomes more obvious now.
Right. You spoke about a multipolar world. There's also a pattern that people are talking about right now, that most of the world is shifting towards right-wing politics, or the incumbents are being voted out primarily on economic issues, or they want a strongman at the helm. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I think it does vary from places to places in the world, and I think we do go through cycles. It's certainly the case that a lot of incumbent governments are losing office because of inflation, because of the high cost of living, and that really derives from the amount of money that was printed and spent by central banks and governments after the pandemic, which needed to be done. I think we live in a world that is rapidly changing economically, rapidly changing culturally. I think for a lot of people, they don't like that, and there are other people who think these changes are happening too fast, and I think that can attract them to right-wing politics, or other people who want there to be a strong man in charge. I probably am from the centre-right, but much more liberal centre-right politics, so it's not the type of politics that I support, but I don't think you can tell people they're wrong. People have a right to vote for who they want, but I don't think we should see it as the end of history. A lot of people have predicted that what is happening now will be the case forever. I think you will see liberal parties and centre-left parties winning elections again.
So, as former Prime Minister of Ireland, one of the youngest to be sitting on that chair, could you tell me about the challenges? Because a lot of people who are watching you might think that at such a young age, in your 30s, you became the Prime Minister. So how did you navigate age with the kind of responsibilities that came your way? How were you a cool-headed boss, or how did you navigate all that?
Well, I was the youngest Prime Minister when I became Prime Minister, but as time went by, I saw other Prime Ministers like Rishi Sunak come along, and they were younger than me. And of course, the new Prime Minister is younger than me as well. I think there are a few things. I always say there are three things you have to do. You have to keep the show on the road, the economy going, the public services being provided. You need to deal with whatever comes at you, and then you also need to carve out space for your own personal agenda, for the things that you really want to do and change. And I always say to people, expect the unexpected. Every time we set up a government, we'd have a big book, which was the programme for government, and it was all the things we were going to do. And never once did we have in that programme things like Brexit, Ukraine, inflation, pandemic. So you have to be prepared for the unexpected and change course sometimes if needs be.
Right. During the pandemic, you went back to the hospitals and served, right? It was a very challenging period, I think, for the whole world. Again, while navigating your duties as a Prime Minister and as a doctor, How did you keep your calm, or what was going through your mind when such a testing time came in your life?
Yes. So what I did is I renewed my medical license, and we had a system whereby you could do that for limited work, and I was mainly doing vaccines and some contact tracing. So I wasn't neglecting my duties as a Prime Minister, but I thought it was important to demonstrate leadership and be on the front line with the people who were. But we had a very strong response. Thankfully, people in Ireland were willing to take the advice of the doctors and the health experts when it came to restrictions that had to be imposed, and then had a very successful vaccine program, about 97% uptake. And for that reason, we avoided many of the worst outcomes that we saw happen in other countries, and I'm very grateful for the fact that that was the case.
A doctor, then a Prime Minister, then currently on a break. A busy person like you, what are you doing in your break time? Do you miss the hustle, or how are you keeping yourself busy?
No, so I've no regrets yet. I thought I would, and I haven't had any at all. And I'm really taking this year, 2025, I suppose, we're nearly 2025, to do some different things, a bit of travel. So great to be here in India today, and going to do some different projects over the course of the year, which I can't announce yet. And then can't decide what I'm going to do next after that. I didn't want to rush headlong into another busy, full-time, responsible role, because I've done that for over 20 years now.
There's a lot of curiosity around your personal life as well, and if you're comfortable, only then we can take it forward. What was the response when you, because politicians have a lot of scrutiny. So when you announced that you're going to, about your partner, and that you were Ireland's first openly gay Prime Minister, how was the response towards this announcement?
Yeah, I'm lucky that it was very positive. When I was growing up in Ireland, it was a much more conservative country. It was illegal to be gay, and we didn't have abortion, we didn't have gay marriage, and that's all changed in the last 10 years. The country's become much more liberal, much more accepting. But I think in many ways a lot of that change had happened already before I became Prime Minister, so it's not that I changed it. It was more a reflection of a society that had changed, that was willing to accept a gay man as Prime Minister, but also somebody who came from a biracial background, whose mother is Irish but father is Indian, and I think we're seeing more of that around the world, which is positive.
Right. So there is something called a rapid fire round, where you can choose to give your answers in a word or a quick one line. So the best thing and the worst thing about being on a break?
The best thing is the freedom. The worst thing is not necessarily knowing where the next paycheck is coming from.
Okay. Your favorite Indian meal, Indian food?
Okay, so I love a thali, just a mix of different things. A good thali. Mainly non-vegetarian, but I love the vegetarian food too. Love some paneer. Lots of different things. The best thing with Indian food is there's so many different types, and I think often people in Europe don't realise that every state, every region has its own food.
What are you watching these days?
These days, just finished watching Rings of Power, which is the Netflix series, which is a follow through on Lord of the Rings. Not sure when I'm going to watch next, but a lot of things I've never had the time to watch because I'm so busy. Things like Borgen and never managed to see Mad Men, so I have a bit of time now maybe to go back and look at some of those things.
Biggest regret?
I think the biggest regret from my time in politics is that we underestimated how quickly we would bounce back from a crisis. So we had the financial crash when I first got into politics, then we had Brexit, and then we had COVID, and we always prepared for the worst. And we're ready for that, but the economy bounced back much quicker than we thought it would. And I think if we'd known that, we would have invested a lot more in public infrastructure quicker. So some of the things that were done in the past 2 or 3 or 4 years might have been done 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. But the hindsight is 2020, and how are we to know that things would turn out as they did?
What do you do to prioritize your mental health?
Yeah, so I like to get exercise. I do CrossFit. Try to get to the gym or the pool most days, so that keeps me sane. Really enjoy that, and now a bit more time for that too. That would be the kind of main thing, and also try to make some time for friends as well.
Okay. So through your different roles, doctor, Prime Minister, on a break, everything, what is your one piece of money advice, financial advice for people who are watching you?
I'm not sure I should give financial advice. There's an old Irish saying which is look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. So if you're careful about the small decisions you make in what you spend and what you invest in, the bigger picture will be right.
All right. Your favorite place in India? Final question.
I do love Rajasthan. I just think it's a beautiful part of the country and so much to see there. So hope to get there again. And I was in Varanasi once, which I think was an amazing experience. But I've never been to the south. I've never been south of Goa, so I have to get down there on my next trip.
Yeah, South Goa is really beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Varadkar, for making time and speaking to us. That was the special conversation with the former Prime Minister of Ireland. Thank you for watching this special conversation. Thank you. Thank you.